Hey everybody, welcome back to the Fish Tank. I'm Fish, and today we're going to be looking at the two new cards that were added to the latest Minion Masters expansion. So, the expansion is called Furry Fury, and this is version 1.43, but what were the new cards? Well, the two new cards that were added in this expansion are Urclaw, Protector of the Peaks, and Bearvalanche. Now, Urclaw is a minion, Bearvalanche is a spell. Let's find out a little bit more about them. So, here we can see Urclaw. So this is a 7 mana minion. It's a Stout Heart minion, so keep that in mind if you're going to be trying to trigger Revelry and stuff like that. So, it has 800 HP, same as a Blue Golem. 75 damage, so it's not particularly high DPS, but it does have a bunch of keywords. So it has Taunt, things will be forced to attack it. It has Thick Hide, so incoming damage will be reduced. Then, when it gets to 50% health for the first time, he will do a Roar. Now, that's an AoE damage Roar, does 100 damage to everything nearby, and then he gains Berserker's Rage and Haste, so his DPS and his movement speed, stuff like that, improves after that. So that's Urclaw. The second card we have is Bearvalanche. Now, this is a 4 mana Stout Heart spell. So, it's explained on the card as the spectral bears charging forward that reduce movement speed by 2 and inflict slow. Now, it takes a little bit of testing and trying this card to figure out exactly how it works, but we've got a good example coming up to show you how that works. Let me explain here. So it says it does 180 damage, half to face. Now, the current iteration of the card's not doing any face damage, so that's potentially either a bug or the card's wrong. Currently not sure. So it does 180 damage over 5 seconds. So think of this like, and thanks to Tangelizer for this suggestion, think of this like Grasping Thorns. So it's an area that does damage whilst minions are in it. The difference being here is that area moves. So you will spawn it, and then the area will move from left to right at a speed of 2. So that's pretty slow, but it will move. Now, what that means is that although it does 180 damage, it's difficult to get all of that damage or a majority of that damage onto one target because the spell is going to be moving, so units may not stay in there for too long. And of course, the spell is moving from left to right, whereas the enemy minions are likely to be moving from right to left, again, reducing the amount of time that they're in there. So, whilst it says 180 damage, you're unlikely to see that on a single target. Now, additionally, it does slow the units that are in it very slowly, reduces their movement speed by 2, and it also inflicts slow. So the movement speed reduction by 2 is whilst they're in the spell, so that 5 seconds, and then the slow is a debuff that they will continue to have afterwards. So those are the two new cards. What I thought it would be nice to do is put a deck together to test out these two new cards. And this deck is also designed to test out a bunch of other things that were changed within the latest patch. So we've got a Milloween deck here because we've got a bunch of spells. And we've got the new Dragon's Nest. Remember, the Dragon's Nest changed slightly, so it gives 2 flightless dragons per spawn, up to a lot of 3. And if it's a 5+ mana spell, they get Rage. We've also got the Frostbearer, which has benefited from the improved Frost, where it only takes 2 instead of 3 seconds. What else do we have? We have the Flyby. That was, of course, buffed. Does 154 damage now, so a very decent removal spell for 2 mana. What else have we got in here? We've got a heal puff, and the purpose of the heal puff is to trigger the Jing Long. Remember, the Jing Long can stun and do multiple stuns. So we've got the Jing Long, we've got a bunch of cheap spells. So the real power of this is the multiple benefits you get from a spell. So if you use a spell, the idea really is use a spell, you get the value of the spell. Additionally, you get the value of the spell triggering the Dragon's Nest and giving you those flightless dragons. Furthermore, you get the value because it's with Milloween, and if her golem's out, you get the value of increasing the golem size and power. And furthermore, you can also use it to trigger the Jing. Difficult to do all of those at once, but this game, at the core, it's about being mana efficient. And if we're able to do 2 or 3 of those things every time we use a spell, then it's going to be really efficient. Okay, so if you check the description, I'll put this deck in there if you want to try it out. And let's check out some gameplay. Okay, let's check out the new cards and the deck that we just looked at in action. So this is a ladder match that we had, I think, on the opening day of the season.
It's on.
I just love the smell of mana.
Millow against Millow. A lot of people trying out this strat, I think. Okay, so we really don't want to use any of our spells until we've got our Dragon's Nest out. Okay, so there we see the Dragon's Nest. One thing I want to draw your attention to is if you look at the Dragon's Nest, you can see it's got 3 eggs on it. Those eggs represent the 3 charges it has. Remember, each charge gives you 2 flightless dragon whelps. Now, every time you use a spell and trigger that, one of those eggs will disappear. So there's a visual representation to you and to your opponent of how many charges are left. Because one thing I've noticed, and I don't think people are particularly clued up on that, because I see a lot of times in my matches, I've used all of the charges from the Dragon's Nest, so there's no more real value from it. But my opponent, if they're like Diona, will be using their crossbow trap, trying to DPS it down, where there's no real need to. So a little graphical illustration there of what's going on, the status of the building, something definitely to pay attention to. And there you see, we've triggered a spell, we've got the whelps at the bottom, and one of the eggs has disappeared. Here comes the Flyby, tries to take care of the bats, and of course generating more whelps at the bottom, 1 charge remaining. And he has his own Dragon's Nest. Okay, so the first time we've spawned Urclaw there, you can see he's got the circles around him, that means he's taunting. You can see the shield icon, that means above him there, that means his damage is being reduced. The damage coming into him is being reduced from his thick hide. But he does go down there, and then we see the first spell, the first use of the Bearvalanche. So what I did there is I spawned it too far to the right, really, so it didn't get full value. You want to make sure you try to get the units to be in it for as long as possible. Okay, so there we see the 2-second freeze. Pretty quick now. So we've got a decent XP lead to start with here. Now, one of the other things I'd like to draw your attention to, and this was something that was added in the latest patch, some of the master perks didn't have timers. Well, a majority of them didn't. But here you can see, if you look at the perk bar at the top, now your perk bar might be at the bottom if you're not using the streamer UI, but the same applies. They have counters in them now. So the first perk, the 15 seconds for us, that's telling us we've got 15 seconds until our next mana golem is going to be available. And then the perk 2, that's our arcane missiles. Again, this is a timer perk, so that's 23 seconds to the next mana arcane missiles available. Remember, those are only going to be apparent for timer-based perks. Perks that are added to as cards to your deck, like Mordar's Tombstones or Diona's Crossbow Traps, for example, those won't have timers because they're just cards added to your deck and you cycle to them as normal. So here we get a lot of DPS coming out. Those whelps do 50 DPS each, so that's a substantial DPS coming out from them. So we've got the Jing in a pretty offensive position, and of course we can use our spells to trigger the Jing, try to stun everything that's underneath it if possible. Frostbearer doing a lot of work there. See, again, we're cycling. We get the extra spell at perk 2, that's more spells to give us additional triggers for the whelps, and also triggers for Jinglong. So we're trading pretty well here. Both players doing a similar strat, but it looks like ours is working out okay. Now remember, health, as I always say, is a resource. We don't need to freak out about taking damage here. We do have a heal puff as well. The main reason, as mentioned earlier, for the heal puff is to give us the ability to activate Jinglong from spawn. Okay, so he's pushing towards the top. We're going to use our Urclaw to tank. Gets a little bit unlucky there with his sacrifice. It does fall on his golem, which is not ideal. But we've got some stuns coming in from the Jinglong, and we're going to cycle it where we can. He does a good job killing the Jinglong with his arcane missiles. But The Glenn's Brew, of course, doesn't make units disappear anymore. It will freeze them, it will heal them, and then they'll get back on their way. And you can see how fast Urclaw is there with the haste after he's done his 50% HP raw. Okay, so we're at perk 3 now. That means our Golem is going to spawn at level 5. That's a substantial increase on our Golem power compared to our opponent. And there we putting pressure on his Dragon's Nest. And the Bearvalanche clearing everything at the bottom there. And we should probably be able to close this out. He's going to be able to tank for a while. I used the Glenn's Brew there on our Frostbearer. But there we go. Game, set, and match. Yeah, and that's just a little example there that I wanted to show you of the new cards and some of the balance changes as well. So there we have it. Urclaw and Bearvalanche. Let me know in the comments, what do you think? Have you tried these cards out? How are you getting on with them? Are they too strong? Are they too weak? Are they just right? What's the favourite strat? Also, if you want to check out the deck as well, as I mentioned earlier, we'll put it in the description. Try it out. See what you think. I've had a lot of fun with it, and hopefully you guys do too. So that's it. Bad as a Fish, signing out. See you soon.